My name is Jack McPadden, and I'm the president of RPEA. I'm joined today by someone who probably doesn't need any introduction, but for those of you who may not know, this is Comptroller Tom DiNapoli, the head of the New York State and Local Employees Retirement System, sole trustee of the Common Retirement Fund. We've just come from a meeting of the Comptroller's Advisory Council on the Retirement System, where we've heard discussion on a number of issues which are of great concern to retirees. One item which has been in the news recently was the governor's call for an advisory panel to manage the investment risks associated with climate change. Now, apparently there's been some confusion in the newspapers that's come about as a result of calls by New York City officials for divestiture from fossil fuel companies. Comptroller, would you like to give us your perspective on that?
Thanks, Jack. And thanks for your great leadership of RPEA. You have a wonderful team. Appreciate your participation in our advisory council and your input between meetings as to clarifying questions, including this question that's come up on divestment. You know, as trustee for the pension fund, we pride ourselves on being investors, right? That doesn't mean that people don't sometimes have concern about where the money goes. And we've had a concern about the risks of the portfolio of climate change. We do think that's a material risk. And for your members who've been following what we do as far as investments, we actually are one of the funds in the country who's a leader in terms of looking for new investments in the emerging low carbon economy. We've been very active with engaging with companies to make sure that they are appropriately addressing the issue of climate risk. You know, there's a big discussion going out there in the larger world, especially in the wake of the Paris Agreement and some of the national decisions by the current administration. And some have looked at pension funds to try to be even more proactive in terms of dealing with this issue. The governor had a call that said divestment might be a strategy to look at. And we indicated prior to his announcement of the state of the Staters that we had no plans to divest. Our analysis shows we still are making money from these stocks. And the bottom line for us is what's in the best interest of the members. The retirees who you represent, the beneficiaries, the active employees who want to be retirees one day. But what we did think was a reasonable point of discussion was trying to look at further ways that we could address this issue in the context of our portfolio. So working with the governor, we are setting up a panel of experts that's going to look at the broad question of the risk of climate and seeing what other strategies may be out there for us to consider. So it's not taking away any of my responsibility or authority as sole fiduciary for the pension fund to make the decision that's in the best interest of the fund, best interest of the members. And we're certainly not going to retreat from protecting that very important responsibility. But we're not afraid to put some of these questions on the table and get some further guidance on how to address it. So our pension fund remains well funded and strong. As you know, we announced today as well that we've hit a new historic high, $209.1 billion. We've never been that high. So we're doing a lot of things right, and we're not going to retreat from doing things right, but we're also not afraid to ask some of the questions about what else could we be doing to invest smartly, make money for the fund, and deal with some of the big issues that are out there.
Wonderful, thank you, sir. Now, since we're here in Albany, the legislative session is underway. There are a number of proposals that have been introduced which would require you to divest from certain types of assets. Yeah. How do you feel about those proposals?
Well, it's always interesting because, you know, when I first became controller, I said, wow, we have to make decisions about where to invest money, but it seems people make recommendations on where not to put money rather than where to put money. You know, you could look at the various proposals on the merits of the issue, you know, climate being one of them, and that's a big part of our portfolio dealing with fossil fuels and energy stocks. But you're right, there are other proposals as well that would have the legislature direct where we can put money or not, you know, or not put money. And as you know, I served in the legislature for a long time, for 2 decades. I have a lot of respect for the legislature and my colleagues. However, a pension fund is not set up to be managed by legislation. And I think whatever your opinion is on some of the proposals on the substance of it, the overall point is that what's protected our fund and made it so strong is that through the controller's office as trustee for the fund, we make investment decisions for the benefit of the members. to have the legislature, which obviously has a political dimension, not that there's anything wrong with that in and of itself, but that's for policy, that's for lawmaking. It is not for legislative action to dictate where the pension fund can and can't put money. So I think whatever the issue is, and however you may feel about the issue, compromising or eroding the ability and the authority of the controller and our investment team to make smart investment choices, to have that done by legislative action would really it's not a question of undermining my authority. It's not a question about power. It's really doing what's right from an investment perspective to secure the retirements of our over 1 million members. So I've been urging, and I certainly urge your members, and appreciate the support of your organization, to remind the legislators that their job is not to manage the pension fund. That's my job, and if we start having the legislature make these kinds of choices, it really is an approach that really could jeopardize the strength of our pension fund. So I have a real concern. I'm hoping the legislature will understand that this is not their purview, and it really would undermine what's made our pension fund so strong.
As you said earlier today in the meeting, it's somewhat surprising. No one disputes the fact that climate change is a real problem, but since when did pension funds become on the forefront of this movement?
Yeah.
Those of us at RPEA are very grateful for your leadership, and thank you for everything that you've done to ensure the protection of the Common Retirement Fund and make sure that pensions are safe for not only all current retirees, but the 1 million current members of the system. Thank you, sir.
And we don't do it alone. RPEA is a wonderful organization. You know, our retirees care so much about what's going on. And I think it's important for the retirees to be supportive of RPEA. You know, join if they haven't joined, because you really are the face and the voice of our public retirees in our state. And the partnership that we enjoy, the support you provide for retirement security and the work that we do, that is so critical to our efforts. So thank you, and thank you to everyone involved with RPEA.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, Comptroller, at our annual meeting, you mentioned that at some point you hope, in the very distant future, when you retire, you hope to join RPEA. Would you please clarify for us that you have no plans to retire now, you're going to stay doing the wonderful job you're currently doing?
Thank you, Jack, for that question. The way you pose it, well, I always say my contract's up for renewal every 4 years, including this year, and I hope to have that contract renewed. But obviously, when I think about the pension system, I do think about it personally. I mean, first of all, I think about it because my mom was a civil service worker in Nassau County. I remember how important the pension was to her and her planning, you know, for the future. And so for me, as I get a little older, you know, I look at that statement a little more carefully myself. So I look forward to being controller for many more years, but at some point I will be a retiree, and that's why I take very seriously how we manage the pension fund. I want that pension to be there, you know, for me and for my needs as well. And certainly at the right moment, I look forward to being a member of RPEA, because RPEA is a unifying force, a unifying voice really for our retired public employees all across New York State. And the vigilance you provide and the help and assistance to look out for the interests of how our pension fund is managed, and keep an eye on me and what we're doing. That's very, very important. And I look forward to years down the road being in the ranks, and in the meantime, those who are retired support RPEA, because it's a very, very important positive influence on the work that we do to protect retirement security for the over 1 million men and women in New York State and their families who depend on the strength of our pension fund.
Thank you very much, sir.